I don't think us putting a large amount of scrap on the market affects the commodity. What affects the commodity, the scrap commodity the most, is the amount of material that is taken offshore to the emerging markets. Turkey is a very large producer of steel and supplies a lot of the Arab countries throughout that region. India and China have added steel mills at unprecedented pace, and their consumption, when the market is strong in one of those markets, their appetite for scrap is quite large. So when we start to read about boatloads of scrap being shipped off of any of the Atlantic or Pacific ports, you can almost guarantee that commodity might make an upward movement in North America to compete with the loss of scrap, as it is very much a supply and demand driven price with scrap steel. You know, one of the challenges we do face in our division within our company of Quantum Murray is that out of the three, with the exception of demolition, we're probably the most capital intensive requirements. As I said earlier, the cost of some of this equipment runs into the millions of dollars. And one of the processes that we want to add to our operation perhaps is a car shredder. The technology and advancement in the car shredders is grown immensely. The emissions controls, the source separation of all the different metals done mechanically versus manually, we can compete with any of the emerging markets in Asia that usually use cheap labor to sort those commodities. But it is a very capital intensive investment, but one that we see a great growth with the obsolete scrap grades, with the growth of the GTA area and other highly densely populated areas in Canada, such as Edmonton or Vancouver.
Going Green for Green is brought to you by the Royal Bank of Canada.
Within the community of London is a site called Pottersburg. It's actually a small little municipality on the fringes of London, Ontario. And Pottersburg is a place where the Ministry of Environment decided to store large amounts of PCBs. Of course, PCBs, we know, polychlorinated biphenyls, which are quite volatile and are carcinogens and have both the ability to affect the quality of air we breathe, certainly the water we drink, and even, for that matter, the ground on which we walk. The advancement of PCB destruction has finally allowed the Ministry of Environment to deal with the Pottersburg storage site. And Quantum Murray has been contracted to uncover and remove the PCB contaminated soils and trek them to north of Quebec City, where they have been destroyed by Bennett Environmental Group.
Really, what Pottersburg, the Pottersburg site is a very contentious site in that the contaminants have been there for over 25 years. What our client, the Ministry of Environment in Ontario, did, which I think was fantastic, was they brought a different level of thinking to it. They didn't just look at it as an environmental cleanup. They said, you know, this is a community issue. It's an area issue. So they have a community advisory group that gets together, talks about how we do the site. They elevated where typically on a dig and dump site you would see our equipment out working in an open field. Here, we're putting a cover over top of the entire site. We're going to build a building and work inside the building so that there are zero emissions coming off of our site while we're doing it. Those types of things that the ministry did that are really leading edge. They also did a quality-based selection. Oftentimes, clients look at, you know, what's going to cost us the least amount of money. What most clients have realized is that the sticker price at the beginning of the job oftentimes bears no resemblance to the sticker price at the end of the job if they pick the wrong partner to work with. So if you look at a quality-based selection, your cost control over the project is significantly better, because in the environmental business, you know, you drill a 2-inch hole to find out what's in the ground. It's not until you're actually in the ground that you have a full understanding of the project, and then it's the character of the people you're working with to determine how that project goes from there on. So I should clarify, it's not a dump site. There was a cleanup that happened in the early 80s on an old industrial site that generated a lot of PCB contaminated soils. Now in the early 80s there was no solution to destroying PCB contaminated soils, so large storage vaults were constructed in the ground to store this material until such time as there's a solution. Today we have a solution. So today what we're doing is we're going into the site and removing those soils for safe destruction. Really our business is, the challenges are in the logistics and actually it comes down to logistics. So cleaning up a dew-line site in the Arctic is a lot more challenging than cleaning up the site next door to our Toronto yard here. So those challenges are standard construction challenges. When we get into product and waste handling, really the challenge with those is where you have commingled contaminants. So in soils, if we have a gasoline mixed with a metal contaminated soil, or in buildings, as I said, if we have drywall and floor tile and carpet mixed with windows in a pile, it's very difficult to do beneficial reuse with those. So that's really what we look for, is how can we continue to segregate things more efficiently to allow for beneficial reuse. Those are some of the challenges. Every site has very particular challenges, which make them unique, and we've had our fair share of them. Groundwater, if there's active groundwater, high odors on sites, those kinds of things are challenges, but they're things that you work your way through.